Greetings. Welcome to Paint Here Now. I am Will Parody. Today we are going to be continuing to paint this abstract painting that we started last week. Basically, we started with some kind of circles and some shapes and forms and just started to make marks and just these circles and following them, adding other colors. We started with some pink, I think. We started with some various colors and then we just started, I don't know, pink was in there early, but various colors we brought in and working to create a piece that has visual interest in action and stuff going on, but also has a certain focus. And it can be hard to know how to do that with an abstract piece. If you have a landscape, for example, you have landmarks already set up, things set up in the piece or in your subject that can allow you to have a stronger sense of compositional focus. But with an abstract piece, how do you know? How do you know what to do? So in a piece like this, we were exploring just the idea of how colors can work together to create larger shapes, small shapes coming together to create larger visual shapes or forms. And we're going to continue to work on that and explore that. But most importantly, a big part of these abstract paintings is to have fun with it and to allow it to teach you something, allow it to show you color patterns, color combinations that you might not normally find if you're trying to use specific colors to tell a specific story or describe a particular scene. So it allows you a lot more experimentation and freedom to see what color can do and how it interacts with other colors. So I guess that's enough chit chat to start off. Let's get right to working on this piece again. All right, let me show you what we've been using. It's basically the same palette that we've used before. I like to use an old ice cube tray or something like that, some type of plastic, recyclable type of material or reusable material, rather than going out and spending money on a palette. Anything like this works. I really like the ice cube trays. You can cover them up after the paint's recessed in, so you can cover it up and they can stay drier longer. But we're using various colors. We've got red, yellow, blue, couple different blues, couple different greens, actually some more yellows in here, some purple, some hot pink, which is real nice. I really like to paint with some fluorescence. They add some boldness and some interest to a piece. And some white, of course, a little bit of white. We use brushes kind of like this. I've been using a brush pretty much almost, a smaller one too, but this is the main size kind of brush we've been using here. Here's our water. This is some old jar, and you can just, put your brushes in, wipe them out like, bang them out like this after rinsing them off. And then we can get to painting. So I'm starting with some darker color this time. And we're going to add some of this darker color. I just added show you what I was doing off stage here, so to speak. Just adding a little bit of water to this blue, just a touch to get it to be a little bit more spreadable, a little thinner. You can see how it's thinner too, which is good. That's what we want for right now. Be able to spread it around a little bit more. Yeah, it's a nice color. And if you see how I'm painting it a little bit watery and thinner, look how light of a tone it is compared to if I'm painting it darker. Look at the difference. So we can do that. We can have all these different tones and different colors and different things going on, all within the same color. So it's a pretty cool thing. Adding a little bit of white in here. Sometimes when I add a darker color, I'll come back in with a little white to add some contrast and to bring back a few more little variables for the eye to bounce around with if I feel like I've gotten a little too heavy with the paint. Some more blue, adding some blue around here. And doing all right. Kind of emphasizing this circular shape over here a little bit. And we're just adding color where we see fit, really. Well, how does that help me? I want to learn. I'm watching this to learn something, not just to say do whatever you want. Well, that's what painting is. Painting is not about having a pattern that you have to follow. Okay, so here I have to use this exact color to make this. No, that's not painting. That's not art. It's if you want to really make art and connect to it and connect to painting, then you're going to have to discover what colors do by putting them next to each other and actually painting. There aren't words to describe a lot of the things that happen in a painting with color mixing, color variation, optical color mixing, which is the type of color mixing that happens when you put colors next to each other and back away and see them blend, as opposed to physically mixing them blend. So much painting is about experimentation and seeing what color does. And I hope that I can encourage you to do that and encourage you to explore with color and find the colors and combinations and patterns, compositions that works for you. But there's never any solid answer. Oh, I've got to put this blue here because of this or that. You know, it really doesn't work that way. Even with pieces based in some type of with an object, pieces that are based on an object or something. Even then, there's no set fast one rule or way. You have to paint a tree like this, or this has to be next to this. I mean, you put black next to white, you're going to have dark and light. You put yellow next to blue, you're going to have a light color and a dark color. If you try to say that yellow is dark, then, well, that's ridiculous. But, so yeah, there are some rules. Yellow is darker than blue for the most part, unless it's a really light blue and a really dark yellow. But other than some basic, obvious stuff, painting really is about what you make of it, how you relate to it, how you explore with color, what you allow it to show you, where you allow colors and forms to lead your brush, rather than feeling like you need to decide things. Let the painting do the work. You're just serving the painting. But there are things that you can do and learn to help you to create stronger work, to have work that's more interesting, and work that is also not only explorative, but is also indicative of your own personality. If you spend too much time, oh, I'm trying to paint this tree to look just like this, or I'm painting in the style of such and such an artist, you're not going to have your own personality come out, your own voice, your own vision. And I think it's really important that when you're attempting art, no matter what it is you're doing, even if you are emulating somebody else's work or trying to, make an object, look a certain way, there is still no real hard and fast rule. It's still an abstraction, no matter, even if you're trying to, put your own, if you're, whatever it is you're trying to do, it's really important to have your own voice in it. Even if it's a realistic piece or, oh, these trees are right here, well, make it somehow your own. I see a lot of times, I've seen art lessons or instructional type of situations where people are given one picture, or one, even worse, one painting that's already been done before, and they're expected to kind of copy the painting. And I've seen instructors, well, you have to put this much green to this blue. Oh, no, that doesn't look right. And no, that doesn't work. That's not art. That's not exploring the creative process of the universe. That's not connecting to the compositional realities of infinity. That's just copying an image. And I just don't even understand how people would want to do that in the first place. Anyways, I don't want to get too cynical here. It's about having fun and about exploring what painting can do when it's in your hands. This isn't about painting. This painting is about what painting can do when it's in my hand. The painting you're working on is about what painting can do when it's in your hands. And that's what painting is. This isn't about how to paint like me. This is about how to learn a little bit something about color and color mixing and forming patterns. So one of the things that you can see that I'm doing is I'm really doing circular forms. I'm making a lot of these single marks, but I'm following these already existing patterns that I see that tend to form arcs, curves, and circles. And again, I'm just bringing those out in the areas that are calling to me because my eye is led to this area. And so right now you can see I'm adding a bunch of red in a slightly different and a little bit more, intrusive way, or a little bit more heavy-handed. I'm doing that on purpose because this sometimes See, I've been doing these subtle strokes and this and that. Sometimes you need something bold to awaken interest and to take your eye in a different direction. And so I'm kind of doing that with this circle. It'll change how this area is a little bit. It mixes. I see my brush. It's already got a little blue on it and white from before, so it's mixing with that red in there to create this interesting kind of a gray purple. I'm going to add a little bit of white in here, just kind of like this. And just let it so what we have here in this abstraction, now we have this emphasis of another kind of a circular form really strongly, this little one, so that tends to bring out the larger shape as well. And we're going to put another one in here. I just saw this kind of curved form. It wasn't too brought out. I'm going to do a little bit more, a little larger, perhaps. I'm not worried about depth. I'm not worried about objects in the front looking smaller than or bigger than objects in the back or whatever, because this painting isn't about objects. It's about color and form and shape. It really isn't supposed to be about anything else. The way color moves, the way paint, or the way certain forms create, or combinations of forms create larger forms or shapes, visual interest. These are all the things that painting is really about. Even if you have a painting of a subject matter, a landscape, a portrait, anything like that, it's the composition, the color combinations, the contrast, the visual interest that will really make that piece stand out, give it interest, give it meaning. So you can look at some great old paintings like the Arnolfini Wedding Portrait by Jan van Eyck, for example, and it's profoundly moving because it's got this ghostly kind of realism to it. But that's not the only reason. Compositionally, it's very, very sound. And the way that the colors are placed next to each other and the way that elements and shapes and objects are placed next to each other and where and how they move around the painting all matters for the overall purpose and power of the piece. So, see, I'm feeling it's getting maybe a little red heavy in here or a little bit of heavy on action, so I'm going to bring it up in here. You already had this sort of clumped area in the middle. Add a little bit more red there. This feels a little dark to me, so add a little bit of white just to lighten it. And again, it's the bouncing of this color and working on these very interesting different forms. All right, I'm going to pick up some green here. I know we got a fair amount of green, but it's a nice color. It fits well in this piece. And a little more, come to some of these areas that need a little bit more attention. It's almost like a green band coming around the corner here. See how that looks. That's interesting. Add a little bit more in here just to curve it up. Sometimes, as you can see, I'm taking my brush, which is a little bit muddy and not much paint, and just adding just a little bit of color in here, a little bit of gray, a little bit of action, just to kind of counter some of the white areas. Again, I'm not like filling in the blanks. I'm just composing here. I'm adding in some interest. Some of this darker green. Interesting. Okay. I really like the this darker green in some of these areas because there's not a lot of real dark colors in this piece. This is like the darkest we're using right now, and it makes a big difference. When you have pieces that are really light in colored or even medium toned, like this tends to be, you add a little bit of dark and it really add some definition and really kind of change things up. Give it a little bit more vibrance, more contrast. like that. And again, it's sort of fitting in with, because I've started this painting with these types of patterns of my brushstroke, making circles, making lines, and keeping this count, this rhythm going throughout the whole piece, it really, really allows for you to be able to find all kinds of other avenues in the piece as you keep painting it that don't look awkward. I can make a circle here because my eye kind of caught it, and I've already started it, even if I didn't intend to, by all of these other circles and forms going around. So by having all of these different types of actions and variables in a piece that I've composed in a certain circular rhythmic motion, it really does allow for you to go in and be able to add a lot more stuff, you know, be able to trust the patterns that are there and work with them, and then be able to really develop some stronger compositional elements. Oh, there's some nice bold dark greens. I wonder how that's going to affect us here. Get enough room on this brush for one more. Blue. Sometimes, you know, blue and green do go well together, so if I feel like I need a little something after adding green, I'll add blue. Of course, it depends on what it is I'm doing. You can see that awesome color that it made. In fact, I'll just look at that beautiful green, blue-green color in there. Really nice stuff. Yeah. Compositionally, though, that's a little bit heavy, so I add a little bit more white. Continue to work in some strokes. A little yellow in here. This type of yellow I'm using will definitely be a little bit more, make a less of a bold green than kind of what we had. It'll help to cover some ground and some area. I'm adding a little bit of red in here so it doesn't feel overly cool. We have a lot of different colors mixed in here. It's not just all the greens are together, all the blues. It's all kind of mixed in. So I want to keep that going as I'm doing this, so that one part of the painting doesn't look alienated or isolated from the others. We want a painting to be whole. We want it to look like it's a complete piece. I mean, you can do paintings if you want to that look like 3 different or 4 different artists did them. That have a bunch of different styles and stuff. And there's something to it, but I think that you can get a lot more. I mean, especially at this point, since all that stuff's been done, you can get a lot more out of painting by really reconciling it as a whole unit, as opposed to just a patchwork of different ideas. You can take a bunch of different ideas and incorporate them into a piece. It's just, there's a way to weave them in. There's a way to make it look like that's the point, rather than having it look like, you know, you attempted 3 different paintings on one piece and there's nothing that really strikes, like really works to connect it to the viewer. There's no right or wrong in art, but there's work that's stronger than other work. In fact, you could say there's even work that's weak. There's work that's, it does its general purpose of describing an idea, but that's it. You know, it's not about the arrangement, a certain sublimity of arrangement that creates euphoria in the consciousness or anything. That it's just about describing an image or expressing something. When we take art further than that, when we view art as basically in a similar way as we do science, as far as having basically an infinite amount of variables and avenues in which to explore the universe, we can get a lot more out of it. Art's not just some fun thing for kids to do. Art's one of the deepest, most powerful, most important activities of consciousness. I don't want to say humans alone, because I'm not 100% sure it's exclusive to humans. But it is such a powerful tool. Even as we're doing this, these little marks, okay, this exercise, where do I put my piece? What's next? What, you know, how am I following these circles? All of those things, even if you're not consciously, cognitively thinking about it, they're going through your mind. You know, your eye, as you're working on a piece, is automatically trying to make sense of what's going on, trying to find patterns, trying to put it into the brain, to a place that can comprehend it. And it doesn't have to be comprehension in a this is what this is, and now I understand. Wait, it can be emotional comprehension. It can be just a feeling. It can be a sigh. It can be a lightheadedness. It can be a joy. It can be anything. But it's a feeling. It's a visceral. It's not so much a description. Oh, I like that. That's nice pattern of blues in here. Bring them up around this red a little bit more. Nice. I'm going to take some of my fluorescent yellow. I haven't used that in a little bit. Come over this blue a little bit. Gives it a nice little accent. Right up on top of it over there. A little bit more under. And again, it connects things up in here. A little bit here to help connect it all. Back a little bit more with this blue. It's a nice darker blue, and I'm making my lines, as you can see, my dots a little bit smaller now in some areas. It's good to have, I mean, you can do a paint. Like Van Gogh had pieces that it's like the same exact brushstroke in the entire piece, just in different directions with different colors. And that is a pretty cool way to paint if you can do it. But sometimes I certainly encourage and utilize a number of different types of brushstrokes, even if I am just only using one brush. And just, again, looking for ways that these marks fit into some pre-existing curves and patterns that we have found in this piece in order to keep a continuity going. Really enjoy having a little extra color on my brush as I get other colors and watching how they mix. Like, okay, I don't know if you can see this. Oh, that's cool in and of itself. The way the paint mixes on the paint, you get these different colors. I like painting that way sometime, allowing a sort of muddy mixing or colors blending to each other and not overly blending them. I want to keep some of these cool streaks. But it's a nice way to utilize paint and visual interest. All right, in here where there's some blue and red and purple, I had a little bit more purple to try to make a little more sense. This area looked a little messy to me, so I'm adding a little bit back. I'm going to clean my brush for this one. A little bit more purple. It's a bright color, even if it's a little dark. And now the purple that I'm putting up here is helping my eye lead from this, which was a little over concentrated, back up over here. So it spreads it out a little bit. I'm going to come up here and add, that looks really nice up against that yellow. And again, emphasizing these kind of larger circles that I made. And if we don't care for this, like if we say, oh, this is, you know, if we look at some patterns we've made or different things we found, we don't care for them, that is okay. We just paint over them, around them, or reincorporate them into the composition. Always paint over things. There's really no wrong stroke, except for the stroke that's not made. It might change everything. You might have a piece that's totally finished. You come along with a stroke and go, poof, and it's ruined, quote unquote, or is it? No, you can just refine it. It just means you have more work to do, but you can't ruin it. I remember there was this documentary that came out in the 80s or 90s, I don't know, a while ago, about comic books. I think it was called Comic Book Confidential. It was a very cool documentary about the history of comic books up until that point, including, you know, of course, some of the bigger comics, but then Robert Crumb later on, Art Spiegelman and Raw, of course, and Mouse. But anyways, point is that in this Comic Book Confidential movie, at the beginning, the opening credits are this guy illustrating this large poster with pen and ink. That's in a style of each of the artists that they're going to be highlighting in this documentary, Stan Lee and so on and so forth. And he does this illustration, and it's all inked in and stuff. And at the end of the opening credits, his arm or whatnot bumps into the ink bottle he was using, and the ink dumps all over the piece. And he's like, ah, and he like freaks out, and that's like the opening credits. It's kind of a fun type of a thing. He does all this work, and then it gets ruined. And I always used to think about, well, not always. There was a point where it's like, man, that's a lot of work that got ruined. But not too much longer when I would think about this opening scene, because it had an impact on me. I would think, well, then you just have a different painting or a different piece. You might have this big block of black. Well, go in on it with some white. Paint some more. Like, it's not what you intended. It's not the comic book thing you wanted, but it can still be a cool piece. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. And that's how I view all kinds of paintings. And I see this sometimes with my students. They'll be working on a piece and they'll just get tired of it, or they'll make a mark that changes it in a way they didn't expect. And I always encourage them to just work with it, roll with it. It's just get rid of your expectations and find something that works. And just add some contrast. Do something that's just fun. Add some, but don't abandon the piece. And sometimes people will set the piece aside and go back, but often they'll work on the piece as I suggest, and they'll reinvent it, and they'll love it, and they'll be so excited that they saw something different, that they didn't give up. A lot of life is about getting frustrated and dealing with it. I think all of us know that to some degree. But if we get frustrated and give up on everything, then we probably wouldn't even get too far out of the bedroom most of the time, honestly. So I think it's important to be able to deal with frustration as an artist, and I think it's important to have frustration as an artist. If your painting is constantly pleasurable, if everything is always turning out the way you want, if you never have a problem, if you never wonder what to do next, if everything always turns out right, you're not painting right. You're not taking enough chances. You're not exploring. You're not being adventurous. You're not taking a risk. And I think painting, really, you should do those things. I mean, it offers that opportunity, and there's some incredible rewards for it. A lot of people will choose to paint, less intensely, and I certainly can appreciate that. But it offers so many opportunities to explore, to do things different, to challenge yourself, to challenge your view of the world. And I think that it's really good to take those opportunities. All right, let me step back and take a look here. So yeah, we've got a little bit, these circles are here. This form is almost oval shaped, but it also comes here. I like that it's not a perfect circle, but that there's still an implication of a form that's more of a circle than this oval. I like this in here. I like what we did there, where it's a little bit darker and gray and then lighter and bold in here. We'll work on this a little bit more. Kind of bringing out a few of these other areas that I think that might be circular. More of this red. Look at that. It's cool. Makes an interesting purple. Dark. Now, I'm adding a little bit of yellow to some of these areas, these blue and reds and purples that I just added. And it should help to make it a little bit muddier in some areas, which I want. Dull out a little bit. Plus, that yellow really adds a nice contrast in with that solid red and blue, even if it is a murky yellow. Cool. All right, fun stuff. A little bit more white in here, some of these darker areas. Pick up a little of this red and move it in here to some of these lighter areas. See, we've got this circle, this circle, this circle, so it's like a radiating group of circles, and it really helps to keep a compositional interest. Well, I like how this is coming. I like we have a few emphasized forms in here that weren't there before. We have these interesting areas. We're going to work along this a little bit more this week, but not too much. And then we're going to call it good. And then, or today, I should say, we'll come back on Wednesday, but I want to bring this one out, this shape in here out a little bit more. Again, just some subtle color, subtle form changes. Add a little bit of green. Bring that out. That's nice. And then I like what I did with the yellow, kind of helping to define the circle and the other side. So we'll do a little bit on this one too. White. Little bit of green, actually. A little bit of water in there. And then this kind of curve comes in and connects up in here. I like that. A little darker in there. I want to add a little bit of darker. I want to make this a little darker up in here, I think. And then right in this area, a little bit more in here. Interesting. Really kind of, this is an older piece of the stroke of green, but adding some of these other greens and stuff we added really made this one stick out a little more than I'd like. So bring in some yellow for that area. And just a little bit more in here. And again, taking a slightly muddy brush and just sort of filling in a little bit of area, gives it a little bit extra gray, fills the color a little bit, gives it a little more visual interest. And a few more, little bit of more blue in here. So when we come back and take a look at this next time, we'll be able to see areas that we think work, that are stronger, that like, yeah, this is actually working nice, I like this. And then we'll be able to look at places that we don't care for, like, that didn't dry right, or this really doesn't work. Like in here, I'm curious what this is going to look like when we come back to it, because I'm feeling it's a little rough area in here. I'm going to try to, a little bit of dots of white to try to bring it, make it a little more curved and bring it back to things. So that's a little bit better. So we'll see what happens there. Again, a little emphasis in here where it feels like it could use some. Oh, I really like what happened there. Just subtle, but really strong. So that's cool. And again, a little bit more in here. Bring this out some. You know, this is not a bad place to stop here. We'll take a look. Yeah, we could keep painting, but I'm trying to, not have these lessons be super long. I might paint this on my own on this for hours, but I might take a break and look and let it dry, then come back. I often will do that. I'll work on other pieces. I work on a lot of pieces at once most of the time so that I can step back from them respectively and give them some chance to dry, to breathe, for me to take a look at them again with some fresh eyes, and then work on some other paintings in the process. Keep the flow going. One more thing I'll do before we call it is just add a little bit more. I'm curious, a few little stronger white strokes, how that might help us when we look at this piece again. Now I'm just sort of allowing my eyes looking at certain spots that might say, hey, a little white here, a little white there kind of thing. Oh, see, this little subtle thing made a nice little cut in this circle. I like that. Now we're starting to get some kind of dimension out of this. All right, I think this is a good place to call it for today. Well, all right, so let's take a look at this here and see what we did. One of the things that happened today was that there was a lot more individual elements that popped out. These circular shapes are really more prominent now, and here and here and here and here. Before they were subtle, there was this larger overarching circle, which is still there. You can still see it, and it's connecting to all of these other ones. And there was a certain fluidity of form that was kind of circular or moving around, but now we definitely have some areas of some slight more definition, even if it is still abstract. I'm curious to see how this will continue to unfold. We'll bring these out some more, we'll add some more detail next time, and just start continuing to make this an interesting, dynamic, abstract piece without turning it into anything too objective. We want it to stay abstract. So we had a lot of fun doing this today. Hope you did too. Thank you all very, very much for spending some time here and painting with us. One thing that I'll emphasize, if you are painting, whatever it is you're working on, please do whatever you can to make it your own. Don't copy other people's work, or any work for that matter. And the main reason that I say that every time and really emphasize it is because I believe a huge part of art making and understanding what it really means to make art comes from sharing your own voice, having something that's particularly you come out in it. And if you copy somebody else's work and it looks just like what they did, that's not you. And it's just not. I just really feel like you'll get a lot more out of art if you continue to work on your own stuff, be creative, and be inventive. I want you to take some ideas that I'm showing you in these episodes and in these paintings and make your own paintings from it and emulate to some degree, but never try to think that this is what your painting needs to look like. It's going to look like what's in your heart and mind. This is just a guide. So with that being said, please keep finding art, finding painting, whatever it is in your life that you do. Keep making art. Love each other. Be happy. And we'll see you next time. Thanks again.